In an era where rock was dominated by men, Grace Slick emerged as a rule breaker. But what the audience never knew was this: behind the title of the Acid Queen, she was fighting battles that the stage lights could never hide. Join me as we uncover the untold story of rock legend Grace Slick, along with rare photos of her. Leave number 1 to let me know you agree to continue watching. Grace Slick was born in 1939 into a seemingly stable family. Her father, Ian Wing, worked in investment banking, while her mother, Virginia, was a former actress. However, Grace's life was never truly peaceful. Due to her father's constantly changing job, the family had to move many times. Besides Chicago, Grace also spent her childhood in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and a number of other cities across California. This nomadic lifestyle made her quickly accustomed to the feeling of not belonging anywhere. From a young age, Grace left a strong impression on those around her. Razor-sharp sarcasm, blunt attitude, and a sense of humor that even many adults struggled to keep up with. That personality made her stand out, but also set her apart, almost like a different species compared to the ideal image of young women at the time. She attended high school in Palo Alto, then was admitted to the University of Miami. But academics never truly excited Grace. Her time in college only made her feel more confined. Although she was a quick learner, Grace constantly felt like she was living someone else's life, not her own. Unable to bear the pressure, she dropped out in less than a year. Once again, Grace found herself in limbo. She knew she didn't have a clear plan for her life. Aside from a powerful and distinctive singing voice, Grace didn't believe she had any other real talent. In 1961, Grace decided to marry Jerry Slick. The early years of their marriage were anything but easy. Money was always a problem. To help support the household, Grace took on part-time modeling jobs for the fashion store Magnin, and picked up various odd jobs on the side. Luckily, fate smiled on her. One evening, Grace, Jerry, and their friend Darby stopped by a small nightclub called The Matrix. Jefferson Airplane was playing that night. Just one performance was enough to change her life. Grace later wrote about that night. "When I saw Airplane perform, I just thought, this is the perfect kind of job. Get paid to play music, write your own songs if you want, perform for a couple of hours each night, hang out with your friends and do drugs whenever you feel like it." And just like that, the idea came together quickly. No second guessing. Grace invited Darby to play guitar, Jerry switched to drums, David Miner joined in, and she took on lead vocals. They named the group The Great Society. Not long after, the band started landing gigs at local nightclubs. The Great Society had its own unique flavor. But at the time, audiences were shifting towards songs with social and political themes. And Grace's band couldn't keep up. Meanwhile, Jefferson Airplane was exploding in popularity. Right then, their lead female singer left the group. A gap too big to ignore, an opportunity too obvious to pass up. Grace seized it immediately. She left the Great Society and joined Jefferson Airplane, a decision that launched her journey as the Acid Queen and took her to the peak of the 1960s. Grace's arrival nearly overhauled Airplane's entire sound. Her voice was deep, powerful, and a little fierce. It pulled the band's music into darker, more captivating territory. More importantly, Grace brought with her 2 songs that would become immortal signatures: White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. Both shot straight into the Billboard Hot 100. The first album featuring her, Surrealistic Pillow, not only reached number 4 on the Billboard 200, but was also certified triple platinum. But light always comes with shadow. Success catapulted Grace into a world she had once only dreamed of. Big money, endless parties, luxury cars, and swarms of fans. And amid all the glitz, Grace began to realize that Jefferson Airplane's music was changing. It was getting softer, more radio-friendly. To her, it was a sign that the soul of the art was being lost. She once said, "No one talks about art anymore. It's just sales, charts, numbers." At the same time, a life of excess dragged Grace into a spiral of drugs, alcohol, and fleeting relationships. She never went to rehab, but looking back, she described herself at 30 as spiritually dead. The sexual revolution of the 1960s also played a part, leading her to cheat repeatedly and gradually see herself as single from 1967 onward. By 1971, her marriage had officially fallen apart. So what do you think destroyed Grace? Fame, or her own self-indulgent lifestyle? After leaving her bands and going solo, Grace Slick realized that walking the path alone was far from easy. Songwriting became especially difficult without bandmates to bounce ideas off or complement each other's strengths. Although she released several albums, including Dreams, a work heavily influenced by the philosophy of the 12-step model used in AA recovery programs, this solo journey never gave her a true sense of fulfillment. Grace admitted that writing on her own left her feeling empty. She once said, "I like writing songs and handing them to friends to play together. Making music in a group has always made me feel more at ease." This reveals that, for Grace, music wasn't just a job. It was also a source of emotional grounding. As the loneliness of creating in isolation grew, she became more and more aware of the familiar support system she had lost, one that had been part of her life for so many years. Personal tragedies only made things worse. In 1984, Grace's mother passed away from illness. The news devastated her, but she chose to stay silent and didn't tell the band right away. She still went on stage and performed as usual before saying a word to anyone. Of that moment, Grace wrote, "I don't remember what songs we played. All I knew was that if I stopped, I'd have to face a loss I couldn't begin to comprehend." She used work as a way to delay her grief, knowing that the moment she paused, the emotions would hit too fast and too hard. Not long after, she was dealt another blow. Her father passed away while she was on tour. She didn't make it in time, and that regret stayed with her for years. Losing both parents in such a turbulent period left Grace emotionally drained. Every tour, every time she stepped on stage, she carried with her the hollow feeling of no longer being able to share those moments with her family like she once did. In 1988, Grace Slick and the members of Jefferson Airplane decided to perform together one last time. The show didn't bring in much profit, but for Grace, money wasn't the point. What she truly wanted was to close the unfinished chapters of the past and create a meaningful ending to a journey that had lasted for years. It was a necessary goodbye to a golden era, one that had been both glorious and chaotic for the band. After the reunion, Grace began to crave a more peaceful life. During that time, she met Len, a man who had gone through a broken marriage and carried an intellectual aura. The two started dating, and at first, things seemed to go well. But it didn't take long before Len's psychological issues began to surface. One night, while Grace was sleeping, he suddenly set fire to her bed. The act left her terrified, and she immediately ended the relationship. From that point on, she never entered another romantic relationship again. Grace chose to live alone, to live more mindfully, to live with control. She lost weight, cut back on alcohol, and left behind the reckless lifestyle that had once defined her fame. Her image had once symbolized women's liberation, but also sparked much controversy. As she grew older, she realized the need to change, to hold on to what truly mattered without losing herself in the process. Even after stepping away from the stage, Grace's creative drive never faded. She turned to visual art and found a new way to express herself that fit her quieter life. Painting allowed her to say what she wanted, without the noise, without the crowds, and without the pressure of fame. Grace once shared her thoughts on music. She said some people see it as the purest form of expression. Others see it as just a fleeting moment. But music exists everywhere, in all cultures, and gives anyone a voice who wants to sing. And when people sing together, even for just a moment, everything feels almost perfect. That's how Grace looked back on her journey. Not smooth, not flawless, but always with the strength to rise again and keep moving forward. Although often mentioned as a counterculture icon, Grace Slick in her personal life was far more complex than the rebellious image she showed on stage. She gave birth to a daughter named China, just as her career was beginning to take off. Becoming a mother while juggling a packed schedule, constant touring, and an unstable lifestyle meant Grace rarely had time for her child. She admitted she was not an ideal mother and was absent from home far too often. This created ongoing tension within the family, especially when China reached her teenage years and began questioning her mother's past choices. Another lesser-known aspect was how Grace viewed herself and her gender. She always saw herself as someone who didn't fit into traditional norms, from the role of women to expectations surrounding marriage. Grace once said she never aligned with the ideal of the perfect wife and devoted mother that society valued at the time. Her bluntness and strong personality often led to conflicts with people close to her, including longtime friends in the music world. Many described Grace as open and approachable, yet unpredictable. When she was in a good mood, she was humorous and magnetic. But when her mood soured, she became distant, sometimes even confrontational for no apparent reason. In her 30s, Grace began thinking more about aging and the changes in her body. She often felt pressured to appear before audiences with the same intensity she had in her youth. Constant use of alcohol and stimulants to maintain energy during performances led to various health problems, including depression and chronic insomnia. At times, Grace isolated herself for weeks, avoiding social contact and focusing solely on painting or writing in her journal. One of the most important relationships in her life was the one she eventually rebuilt with her daughter China, once both of them had grown older. Although there had been distance between them in the early years, they later developed deep mutual understanding. China once said her mother was an artist first, a woman second, and she learned to accept that. As for Grace, looking back, she said she did not regret the choices she made in life, but she wished she had spent more time with her daughter. After officially retiring from the music industry in the early 1990s, Grace chose a different path. She turned to painting and spent most of her time creating visual art. It wasn't a replacement for music, but rather a way for her to continue being creative without the pressure of performing or living in the public eye. Her work often explores surreal imagery, portraits of fellow artists from her era, and deeply personal experiences she had never spoken about before. In recent years, Grace has lived a fairly private life. She avoids television appearances and doesn't participate in reunion tours or nostalgia events like many of her peers. Her reasoning is simple. I don't think people over 70 should be jumping around on stage anymore. This view has made her one of the few legendary artists who have firmly refused to return to performing, despite frequent invitations. She accepts aging as a natural part of life and doesn't try to cling to her former image. Grace has faced various health issues, including diverticulitis and a serious hospitalization in 2021. However, she recovered well and continues to live in a peaceful environment, far from the noise of the entertainment world. She still keeps in touch with a few old friends in the industry, but rarely agrees to long interviews. When she does speak to the media, she often shows the same wit she had in her younger years, while candidly reflecting on her rebellious past as something necessary to truly understand herself. Though she stepped away from the spotlight, Grace Slick hasn't entirely avoided controversy in her later years. She has always been known for her blunt honesty and unfiltered opinions, a trait that has stayed with her well into old age. One of the most notable incidents occurred in 2017, when Grace allowed one of her classic songs to be used in an advertisement for a major brand she had long opposed. The decision surprised many fans and sparked debate over how a counterculture icon could collaborate with a corporate giant. However, Grace later explained that she had only agreed to the deal so that the money from the ad could be donated to an organization supporting refugees. This response shifted public opinion, and the incident quickly came to be seen more as a socially conscious act than a commercial one. In her later years, Grace has continued to make bold public statements that grab attention. She once spoke out against older musicians who try to perform as if they're still in their prime. She said, "Your body changes, your voice changes. There's nothing wrong with stepping back at the right time." Though her comments sparked debate, it also inspired many people to embrace aging with grace rather than cling to old images of themselves. Grace has also spoken openly about her past drug use, not as a badge of pride, but as a cautionary tale about the consequences of living without boundaries. Another interesting aspect of her later life is her continued encouragement of young artists to stay independent in their creativity. She believes that art is often distorted by market pressure, and that the most important thing is to stay true to your feelings, whether the audience likes it or not.